185,000 soldiers couldn't defeat this angel. One of the greatest stories in the Bible. The Bible narrates numerous interventions by God in the affairs of his people, and the story of Hezekiah and his many enemies is one of the most impressive examples of divine intervention. Hezekiah was a man in total contrast to his terrible father, Ahaz. During his 29-year reign, he had the unusual honor of doing what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his ancestor David had done. This was no easy task, considering the environment and circumstances he found himself in. It was the 3rd year of Hosea's son of Elah, king of Israel, when Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was only 25 years old when he ascended the throne, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother's name was Abi, daughter of Zechariah. Hezekiah, in a time when idolatry and turning away from God were common, decided to follow a different path. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to everything his father David had done, as recorded in 2 Kings 18 verse 13. He was one of the few kings who supported the high places of worship to the Lord, at a time when many leaders were leading the people away from God. Hezekiah not only supported these high places of worship, but also took drastic measures against idolatry. He cut down the Asherah poles, destroyed the idols, and, perhaps most significantly, destroyed the bronze serpent that Moses had made centuries earlier, which had become an object of worship for the Israelites. This serpent, called Nehushtan, meaning bronze image, was made by Moses under God's direction to heal the people during a deadly plague. Numbers 21:8-9 describes how the Lord instructed Moses to make a bronze serpent and place it on a pole, and everyone who was bitten by a serpent, if they looked at it, would live. This image, which once was a symbol of salvation, had turned into an idol, something that God abhors. It is truly tragic that an object used by God to save his people became a focus of wrong worship. This illustrates how something originally meant for good can be distorted over time. For these reasons, among others, Hezekiah is considered a king who stood out and was above other kings in his adherence to God's commandments. He not only destroyed the idols, but also restored true worship to the Lord throughout the kingdom. According to 2 Kings 18 verses 4-5, Hezekiah removed the high places, broke the sacred stones, cut down the Asherah poles, and smashed the bronze serpent that Moses had made, for up to that time the Israelites had been burning incense to it and calling it Nehushtan. Hezekiah trusted fully in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, neither before nor after him. After reading about the unfaithfulness and atrocious acts of so many kings of Israel and Judah, the story of Hezekiah comes as a relief. His reign was a testimony of his faithfulness to God's commandments. He prospered wherever he went because the Lord was with him, according to 2 Kings 18 verses 6-16. Hezekiah was faithful to the Lord, did not turn away from him, and kept the commandments that the Lord had given Moses. Because of his faithfulness, the Lord blessed him in everything he undertook. Hezekiah rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him anymore. He defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its borders, from watchtower to fortified city. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah's reign, which was the 7th year of Hosea's son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser king of Assyria marched against Samaria and besieged it. After 3 years, Samaria was captured. In the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of Hosea king of Israel, the king of Assyria deported the Israelites to Assyria and settled them in Hala, in Gozan on the Habor River, and in the towns of the Medes. This happened because they did not obey the voice of the Lord their God, but broke the covenant he had made with them. They neither listened nor followed all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. In the 14th year of Hezekiah's reign, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. Then Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent a message to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, "I have sinned. Withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand of me." The king of Assyria exacted from Hezekiah king of Judah 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house. At that time, Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorposts he had overlaid and gave it to the king of Assyria. This tribute was a desperate measure to avoid Judah suffering the same fate as Israel. Hezekiah, who had previously resisted Assyrian rule, now found himself forced to yield in the face of the immense threat. Unfortunately for Judah, things did not go as planned. Sennacherib attacked and captured all the fortified cities of Judah, leaving only Jerusalem intact. It was at this moment that Hezekiah might have concluded that he had underestimated the situation. He had already admitted to Sennacherib that he had acted wrongly and offered a ransom to prevent his people from suffering the same fate as Israel. The demand was enormous, and Hezekiah sent all the gold and silver he could find, even stripping the gold from the temple. However, things were about to get worse. God surrounded the Assyrians around Jerusalem to test Hezekiah's faith and demonstrate his own power to his people. Sennacherib did not believe that Hezekiah's ransom was sufficient and was looking for an excuse to attack Jerusalem anyway. The Assyrian king sent a delegation and a massive army to Jerusalem to demand the city's surrender. It was a moment of great tension and uncertainty for Judah. Then Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent another message to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, "I have sinned. Withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand." The king of Assyria demanded 10,000 talents of silver and 1,000 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave all the silver found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasures of the royal palace. Once again, Hezekiah had to strip the gold from the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord to satisfy the Assyrian king's demands. However, even this humiliating submission did not appease Sennacherib. The successor of Shalmaneser, conqueror of Israel, was the Assyrian king against whom Hezekiah would have to fight. Sennacherib, after receiving the tribute, was not content and wanted more. He sent a large army to Jerusalem, led by his top officials, including the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh. When they arrived at Jerusalem, they stopped at the aqueduct of the upper pool, on the way to the washerman's field, and called for the king. Eliakim son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace, Shebna the scribe, and Joah son of Asaph the recorder went out to meet them. The Rabshakeh said to them, "Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. On what are you basing this confidence of yours? You say you have counsel and strength for war, but they are only empty words. On whom are you depending, that you rebel against me?" Sennacherib did not believe that Hezekiah could resist his power and tried to intimidate him and the people of Jerusalem with demoralizing words. He reminded Hezekiah that the Egyptians, on whom Judah might have been relying, were a weak and treacherous ally. He also said that Hezekiah had angered his own God by destroying the high places and the altars. Sennacherib offered Hezekiah an alternative. If he surrendered, he would be taken to a more peaceful place where he could live in peace, with the promise of a better life than he would have in Jerusalem. Hezekiah and the people of Judah were shaken by the threats and pressure. Hezekiah tore his clothes in mourning and put on sackcloth. He went to the temple of the Lord to pray. At the same time, he sent his messengers to the prophet Isaiah, asking for help and guidance. Isaiah responded that they should not be afraid, for God had heard the blasphemy of the king of Assyria and had a plan to deal with him. The prophet assured Hezekiah that the king of Assyria would return to his own land and die there. Indeed, as Isaiah had predicted, Sennacherib heard news that the king of Ethiopia was preparing to attack him and began to prepare to leave. However, before departing, he sent one last letter to Hezekiah, reaffirming his threats. Hezekiah took the letter to the temple and prayed to the Lord, pleading for his intervention. God responded through Isaiah, assuring Hezekiah that the city would be spared and that Sennacherib would not enter it. That night, the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. By morning, all the bodies were dead. Sennacherib, seeing the disaster that had befallen his army, returned to his land, where he was later killed by his own sons, as had been predicted. This account serves as a powerful reminder that faithfulness to God does not exempt us from adversity, but prepares us to face it with faith and confidence in divine action. The episode clearly demonstrates God's power to protect His people and fulfill His promises, even in the face of the greatest threats. The story of Hezekiah is an inspiring testimony of courage and unwavering faith that can challenge even the greatest obstacles. Despite seemingly insurmountable adversities and formidable threats, divine intervention proved powerful and decisive. Hezekiah's battle was not just a fight for survival, but an affirmation of God's supremacy over any earthly power. This episode underscores the importance of trusting in God and seeking His guidance in times of crisis, knowing that even when everything seems lost, God's hand is always present to guide and protect those who remain faithful.